Allison from Starliner Music. Welcome to my channel. Today in Fingerboard geometry, I'm going to introduce you to the CAGED system. First, we'll look at some basic principles of the CAGED system. Then we'll talk about octave patterns and do some exercises. Here you go. I hope you enjoy it. So many of you have asked me about the CAGED system. My students are always asking me about the CAGED system, and it's something that I find very valuable for organizing the guitar. It's not a replacement for just understanding the little bits and pieces of what I term as fingerboard geometry, as far as just understanding where intervals are and some basic shapes, but it's a really great way to connect up arpeggio, chord, and scale shapes together. So the idea with CAGED is that all these patterns come from open parent chords. So these are the open parent chords. They spell the word CAGED, C-A-G-E-D. So we have a C, A, G, E, D. Now let's look at each of those chords for 1 minute. So we have a C chord. Now this is what we call a triad. I just played all triads. That means 3-note chords. If it's a 3-note chord and I'm playing 5 strings or 6 strings, we doubled some of the notes up. So we only have root, third, and fifth of the chord. So in the case of a C, that's root, third, fifth, root, third, or if you're going by notes, C, E, G, C, E. So my object here is to find the C's. Those are the roots C in my C chord. Now this is going to be useful for us here in a minute, so just bear with me. There are the C's in a C chord. This is a root pattern and part of our CAGED system. So now let's go on to A. So we have A here. Again, we've got some notes that are doubled. I have A, E, A, C sharp, E. Otherwise known as root, 5, root, 3, 5. Now the roots are A, open, and A here. So if you visualize, here's your open A behind the nut, open A, and then A here. So this is the root pattern for an A shape in CAGED. Now let's go to G. So here's my basic textbook chord dictionary G chord. And if I look at the notes here, I have G, B, D, G, and then B again, and then G on the top. So the roots here would be G, G, and G. So I have root, third, fifth, root, third, fifth. Again, root, root, and root. So this one root here is the open G string. So this is like 2 octaves. I have G, G, and G. So that is my G-shaped octave pattern for CAGED. Now we have E. So in my E chord I have root, 5, root, 3, 5, root. And the notes are E, B, E, G sharp, B, and E again. So my E's in this shape are E open, E second fret here, and open E again. So if I look at the shape, it's like this. So I have 3 E's in this octave pattern. And then finally to my D shape, I'm only playing 4 strings here, so I have root, 5, root, and then the third on the top. Otherwise, the notes are D, A, D, and then F sharp. So my 2 roots are the open D and the 3rd fret D here. So that forms a shape that looks like this. Open D to the finger D. Now that I've looked at all of these root patterns, I'm just going to run through them one more time. I can start to connect them up the board. So here they are, one more time, all in open position. Here's the C pattern, A pattern, G pattern, open, E pattern, open E, 2nd fret E, open E, and D pattern. Now let's see how those shapes connect up the fingerboard. Alright, I'm going to walk you through this next step. It might seem a little brutal. Some of these chord shapes may not be familiar to you. I'm not suggesting that you have to learn these chord shapes in order to understand the CAGED system. I'm just giving you the benefit of understanding the general background of these movable chord shapes. So when I play a C chord, it's just open. So I'm going to demonstrate this on C. If I play a C chord in a movable form, that means I take one of my open chords and place it to where it's a C up the fingerboard. So for instance, most of you know your E and A shape bar chord. So like here's an A shape, open A, and if I move it to where it's a C, it looks like this. It's because, again, my root pattern was like this and like this. So this is a C chord coming from my open A shape, where the root pattern was the same. That's going to be the same here. Now we're on C. So I have C chord in a C shape, C chord in an A shape. Now, the beauty of the CAGED system is it does follow the word caged, and since I'm starting on the C shape, I'll spell the word caged right up the fingerboard, A. So the next letter is G. That must mean that I can play a chord that's a C chord that looks like a G, and that's the case. If I take a G chord and I make it like this with a bar, this is ugly, sorry, I don't use this much, end up actually using half of it sometimes, like the lower part or the upper part. This is a little cumbersome, but just for demonstration purposes, here's a full C chord like a G. The roots, though, are C, C, and C, and that's the same shape as we had down here at open when it was a G chord. So this is a C chord. So far we had C, A shape C, G shape C. Now we're going to play an E shape C. Now most of you have played this shape before. Regular good old E shape bar chord, and it's a C chord though. Our roots are here, here, and here. And then finally I'm getting to the last shape, that's a D shape. So if I take a D chord and I move it to where it's a C chord, that would be all the way up here, and I'm actually going to include the lower root, so it looks like this. You can see how though this part looks like D. My lower root is a C there. So again, the root shape looks like what we had down here for open. And we had the open D. We had this shape going on. And so up here, those will be C's. So one more time with the chords. C-shaped C chord, A-shaped C chord, G-shaped C chord, E-shaped C chord, D-shaped C chord. Now what's most important about this whole business of connecting those shapes up for the different C chords is not really the chords themselves, it's actually the octave patterns that sit underneath those shapes. So this is a C octave or a C octave shape, and it's C currently, but it's also a C shape. And then the root here currently is C, but we're playing it in an A shape because it was from this chord A. And then this is a G shape because it was from that big G chord. It's actually a C at this point in the neck. And then C's out of the E shape from this chord. And then finally C's in a D shape. And we should be able to easily connect those up the board with a little practice. C, A, G, E. Those are the shape letters D, all on the note C. So now let's talk about why this is useful. All right, just to show that we can start on another pattern letter other than C, let's use the pattern letter E, starting on the chord G. So here is a G major chord, but it looks like an E with a bar. And so our octave pattern is the E octave pattern. And this correlates to lots of scales and arpeggios. Let's say we're doing a G major pentatonic here. This would be E shape. Now it doesn't have to be major, it could be minor. So for instance, here's a G minor chord, and this is a G minor pentatonic in the E shape. And I have a corresponding arpeggio, like a G minor triad arpeggio. That all fits right here where the G looks like an E. And then I could connect up the board from there. So the next letter after E in the word caged is D. So I'm going to place that D-shaped octave pattern on the notes G. And it looks like that. And here's the full chord. Or it could be minor. Or it could be 7 for that matter. So all of those shapes connect up in this D area for our G type chord. And I could play scales that correlate with this octave pattern. So for instance, a D-shaped minor pentatonic. There's a D-shaped minor chord. Again, the root's G here, so these are all G-type scales. G minor pentatonic. It could be a G major scale. Again, this is right over the top of our D-shaped octave. And then D would connect to C. So again, here's the C shape we looked at before. This is still on the note G. And we'd still have our same scales and arpeggios here. This is a C-shaped major arpeggio, or C-shaped major scale, etc. Again, still on the root G. So that means all those shapes still connect up the neck no matter which pattern letter you start on. All right, so I'm going to walk you through an exercise for finding caged root patterns. This is essential to grasping the CAGED system. You should be able to do this for all 12 roots. I suggest that you use the circle of fourths or fifths as a tool for this exercise. If you don't understand what the circle of fourths or fifths is, please look at my video on that. I'll definitely give it to you in the exercise that I'm going to demonstrate on a few roots here. But let's start on C, and this is how you're going to do it. You're going to find C, and I'm going to use the C pattern because the lowest C's here in the first few frets represent a C shape. And if you don't know the names of the notes on your fingerboard, you need to get a diagram of the fingerboard notes so that maybe you can determine which pattern to start on. But if you start on the C pattern, it follows the word caged. So the next pattern would be the A pattern. Right? And that connects to the G pattern. and that connects to the E pattern, and then to the D pattern. So now let's do that on another root. Let's do it on G. That's the next root in the circle of fifths. So if I do that on G, the G's in this area of the neck look like a G pattern. So that one's open. So that's a G-shaped pattern for G. Here's an E-shaped pattern for G. A D-shaped pattern for G. C-shaped pattern for G. A-shaped pattern for G. And as a bonus, if you want to do the closed G pattern, you can do that. That would be the same as open, except we're using the 12th fret instead of an open string. So you would continue around the circle of fifths after G. That would be D, A, E, etc. And hopefully you can work that through all 12 roots and get comfortable with finding these caged octaves on the fingerboard, because then all your chord shapes and arpeggio and scale shapes can be tied to these root patterns. Here we go with the exercises. That's it for Intro to the Caged System. I'm Kimberly Allison from Starliner Music, and I hope to see you back on my channel soon.